This is the BANDSAW, and this is going to be only for my advanced class. I'm going to show you how this machine works. You'll see back here, there is a motor right there. And inside the machine, you'll see, I'm not going to open the bottom compartment, but inside the machine, that motor drives a wheel, which looks very similar to this wheel. And as you can see up here, there's a wheel. So there's two different wheels that are the exact same size. And there is a blade that is a strip of metal with teeth on it like this. And it's one continuous strip of metal. Goes all the way around both of these wheels. So that motor drives the bottom wheel, and then this top one moves with it. It goes around like this, okay? And so the business end is right down here. What's gonna happen is that blade is gonna continue its movement. You'll just have a constant stream of saw teeth pressing your wood against the table. This machine does have a fence. It's right here, and it's an adjustable fence. So you can actually loosen this right here. And this is a plastic knob, guys, so be careful. Don't over tighten, don't over loosen. It's similar to the scroll saw's pressure foot. You just need to turn it like that much, and then your fence will slide. And there is a scale, an inch and centimeter scale, right here on the bottom, so you can slide this fence. Let's say you know you want a piece to be 3 inches. You can just slide that fence to the 3. The distance between the fence and the blade will be exactly whatever you set this to, okay? So this is a really great tool. It's similar to the scroll saw in that you can cut curves and turns. You know, you can put a piece in there and turn it left or right a little bit. There are different size blades, and what we have here is a 1/4 inch blade. So this would be really good for turning. The thicker or the wider the blade gets back this direction, the less it will turn, which can be good if you want to make a straight cut. There's 3 different dimensions in wood. That means there's 3 different directions we can cut it. If we were to cut a piece of wood like this, that would be cross-cutting because we're cutting across the grain. If we were to turn it like this and cut it, we would be ripping the wood. Think about you're ripping ripping a length out of the wood every time you cut it. But you can also turn it like this. This is called resawing your wood. Now you can do that on the table saw. You can resaw a little bit on the table saw, but it's much easier to do on the bandsaw. Now the fence can be adjusted, not only its distance from the blade, but you can also change the height of the fence like this. So if you were going to resaw a piece of wood that was a little bit taller, you'd have more of a fence to hold it against, okay? So you may or may not use the fence depending on what you're doing. If you're just cutting a CO2 car, which is the main project that we use this for, then you probably won't need the fence because it's all gonna be freehand. And so we would just take the fence off. Okay, so let's go over some safe use rules. Now, first of all, guys, you really need to understand, this is the saw that will cut your fingers off, and you it won't even ask you. Like, it will just be like, yep, I'm gonna take your finger off. You've got to respect this saw. This is the same type of saw that is used in industrial meat packaging facilities. And they just take big chunks of meat, and they have the blade guard, which is this red part. Okay, they've got the blade guard way up there, and they'll just take big, like ribs and just slide them right through. And I'll show you a video sometime. It cuts straight through meat and bone without bogging the engine down at all, okay? The main safety feature on this machine is the blade guard. So let's say you're cutting a piece of wood like this. You need to make sure that that blade guard is almost touching the wood. There it's touching the wood, and I'll back it up just 1/4 inch. So that's actually on your safety test. How far should the blade guard be away from the wood? 1/4 inch, 1/4. If you have it up higher, you just have that much more blade exposed to accidentally touch. As you're pushing a piece of wood through, now in this case, the wood is pretty wide and stuff, and I won't really run out of room. If I'm gonna cross cut it, I've got plenty of room to keep my hands far enough away from the blade, right? But if I were gonna push it through like this and rip it, I will get to a certain point where my fingers are gonna have to be really close to the blade to push it through. That's when you're gonna grab another piece of wood, a scrap piece of wood, to help you push it all the way through the cut. I do not want your fingers ever being in this area right here. See this area in front of the blade? Just imagine this area right here. you should never have your fingers there, okay? So if you're gonna put your fingers out here, fine. If you're gonna put your fingers back here, make sure they're on the very edge of the wood that you're pushing it through, and you can use the fence for support. But guys, as soon as you can use your push stick with a piece of scrap wood, you need to be doing that. For most of the stuff that you're gonna do, you should have the fence down like this. It's a little bit of a lower profile. And let's just say we wanted to cut a strip of wood that's 1/2 inch. I'm gonna run this side across the fence. As soon as I can get in there with my push stick, I'm gonna start pushing it all the way through with my push stick, okay? You wanna make sure as you're pushing it through that you feed it through smoothly and evenly, and that you do not force it. You have the ability, as the saw is running, to force the blade off the wheel. So make sure that you are just letting the blade do the cutting, that it's just gonna cut that little bit of wood at a time, and that you're not trying to either twist it too much or force it too much, because you can cause the blade to come off those wheels. It's just tension that's being used to hold the blade on the wheels. There's a tension adjustment in the top part, and if you push too much, you can push the blade off the wheel. So please be careful not to do that. If you need to back out of a cut, you need to wait till the blade comes to a complete stop and then back out of the cut. You need to plan your cut so that you can keep your balance all the way through. Last year, I saw a very smart student, very, very smart guy. He reached through kind of like this and was like pulling his piece back through like this. I understand like why you wanted to pull it through. That was safer than pushing it, okay? But you've got a really big blade through here, and I just don't want to risk your safety at all. You need to stand back here, keep your balance here, keep your weight back here on this side of the saw. Don't lean forward, because now your center of mass is wanting to go toward the saw where that really fast, sharp spinning blade is. Just don't do that. You can get a partner to come stand on this side of the blade, especially if the piece is longer, and they can help you after it crosses the back side of the table. They can help you pull it through. That's totally legit. You never want to stand, though, on this side of the saw, which would be the right side of the saw, and that's on your safety test. Don't ever stand on the right side. Now, this saw is a newer, modern bandsaw, but that rule comes from some older bandsaws that weren't as protected on this side. The old school bandsaws, which you might come in contact with at some point in your life, they're more open on this side. And so if the blade were to snap, it's possible that that blade could be shot out the side. I've never seen it happen. I've only heard about it happening, and I don't think it's something that's likely to happen in our situation. These blades have snapped before. It's kind of something that just happens because it's a piece of metal that's been welded together, so there is an inherent weak spot on the blade. I would prefer you to not break them because they do cost a lot of money, and we do have to buy them when they break. When they have broken on this machine, there's never been an injury or the blade coming out in a violent way. That's never happened here. Like any saw that you use, you want the blade to come up to complete full speed, right? So the motor only runs at one speed on this saw. You want it to come up to its full speed. So it might take just a second. Wait for that to happen before you start to cut. Don't let the wood touch the blade until the machine is up at full speed. If you do hear a strange sound happening when you're cutting, if the noise changes in any way, if there's a clicking, if there's, if you feel like the blade isn't moving anymore, just, turn it off by pressing this big red button in. This is the on switch, okay? You'll pull it out to turn it on, and you can just push it in to turn it off, and then step away from the machine and come let me know. Now, ideally, I should be very close to you when you're cutting on this machine. We only have one of them, so we will have to take turns. Something else, I really like to keep this machine unplugged when we're not using it, because I don't want anybody to accidentally turn it on. It's the black plug right here. So please help me out here. When we're done, make sure it gets unplugged. We'll unplug it, put it back like that, okay? So that's where we'll put the power cord. I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate a safe cut for you now. I've got my hearing protection in. I'm gonna use these safety glasses. I'm gonna make sure that there's no one standing anywhere near me, that I got plenty of space. The way I'm gonna cut, I'm making my plan right now, okay? You put this wood up here. I've got my fence set. This is exactly my measurement. It's a 1/2 inch, so I don't need to measure or mark anything because I'm gonna use the fence. I'm gonna press my wood up against here, and I'm gonna use this as a push stick to push my piece all the way through. I'm gonna make sure my fingers do not cross into the blue table insert in any way. I am gonna push a little bit back here because this piece is a little bit small. But as soon as I get here, I'm going to stop and I'm going to switch over to my push stick. This right here is the vacuum port. In that lower compartment, sawdust is generated because the sawdust is pushed down through the table insert and into this big compartment right here. Well, there's a vacuum port right here. We want to use that. Make sure that this baffle is open like that, and come back here to this box near the back door and press start. That's going to evacuate a lot of the sawdust that would accumulate inside the lower compartment. Okay? When you're done, press that close. Please remember to come back here and press the stop button to turn off that fan. Making sure the blade is not touching the wood, I'm going to go ahead and turn the saw on. I'm going to use this one to hold it against the fence. Okay? And now I want you to notice, I've already turned the machine off, but if you can see on the video, the blade is still spinning. And the blade's going to continue to spin for, I don't know how long, maybe 30 or 40 seconds. That's because there's no brake on this machine. There's a brake on like the miter saw or even my table saw, but there's no brake on this machine. It's going to just continue to spin and spin. You want to make sure that that blade completely stops before you remove any wood off the table. Okay, that's just the safe thing to do. Now the blade is stopped, and come back here. And that was a pretty good cut. Something about the bandsaw is that the cuts that you make on it won't be perfectly straight just because that blade does flex, and that's what it's made to do. You can make straighter cuts with it if you get the deeper blades. This saw is really made for turning. So when we cut our CO2 cars, you'll have a curvy design on there. You can get in here and you can start to turn it. When you do that, you're going to generate some scrap as you cut. Make sure that you do not reach too close to the blade to remove the scrap off the table. Take a piece of, like a longer piece of scrap like this to scoot it off the table like that. So you always use a piece of scrap wood to remove smaller pieces of scrap wood that are stuck on the table. Okay, I think that about does it, guys. At this point, you should be ready for your safety test.